Cody Rhodes starts things off. He's got some news. He has just been cleared for action. So he asks, what's next? And out comes the debuting Ricky Saints. He does his same NXT entrance, which I have to say, Neil, like, I think at the PC, it plays well.
Yeah.
In an arena, I'm not as big of a fan of the whole da, 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 like the arm raising thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it works as well personally, at least on this first go. Any thoughts on just the?
I completely agree. It's in my notes. I wasn't a huge fan of it in NXT, to be honest, because beyond the very initial part of the theme music, it goes into just the most generic theme music imaginable. And there is the dun 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 where he can do some motioning.
Well, the motion is simply him raising his hands up like he's like a little kid, you know?
Yeah, he won the race. The presentation isn't tremendous. The theme music's awful. So as I've already said,
could be worse, Neil. Okay, like he could have some sort of stacking them, racking them. Yes,
it's true. But no, I agree with you. I think this entrance wasn't blowing me away in NXT, and in the larger space of the arena, it looks a bit weak.
How did you feel about his reaction from the live crowd in Tulsa just upon entrance here?
It was okay. Not a massive reaction. It was pretty mild, and I'm sure these people know who he is, you know. So it's interesting to think, though, that there was 6,000 in a large arena. That hadn't factored into my calculations about all of this. True. But there were some very good reactions tonight.
Yes.
So
I would say
it was fairly mild.
I would also say mild. Like, it wasn't necessarily like an Obafemi reaction, nor maybe even a Trick Williams reaction, but kind of just okay, which maybe says a bit more about just maybe the amount of hype he was able to create within NXT. So Saints acknowledges that he and Cody are not strangers. He says a revolution is happening and the leader will be Saints. He says, welcome to Friday Night Saints, which elicits some boos and Cody chants. Cody says this is a bold move. He says, what is the difference between now and the last time you stepped up to me? Which of course references Saints' AEW debut, answering Cody's TNT title open challenge way back in 2020. The crowd does react to this with an ooh, you know, so it maybe conveys that at least a large section of this audience recognizes and totally understands this AEW history. Starks says his 3 title reigns have aged Cody. He's a former NXT and North American champion, and he has stood in the background and congratulated Cody after all of his successes, and he hopes Cody will do the same because he is here to relieve Cody of his duties. Cody takes this as a challenge and makes the match for tonight. Stark says one more thing. He says he didn't come here to make a statement. He came here to change who this show is about. And Cody again repeats that he is easy to find but hard to beat. So I felt overall this was a good showcase of Saints' comfort on the microphone, which even dating back to that first AEW appearance, I think is his very clear strength. Pairing him with Cody right off the bat, folding their AEW history into the present, I think helps fit Saints into this world in a way that suggests he's always kind of been lurking in the background, especially when he says he's congratulated Cody for all of his successes. I did overall enjoy this segment as a way to introduce him versus maybe just perhaps just even just a match against a lower card talent. But what did you think about this section before the match?
Yeah, the entrance aside and the fact that the crowd reaction wasn't wonderful, Saints did a very good job of the promo, and it is something that he excels at. I remember this guy on NWA Power before AEW, and even then he was extremely charismatic and good on the mic. He's not lacking in self-confidence. So the question for me in WWE, including NXT, was, well, he's going to be written to a little bit more, and having to deal with some of that. How will he perform? And he didn't show any nerves, any issues tonight. I think, when the meat of the segment got underway, he did well. The crowd perhaps weren't reacting wonderfully to it all, but I mean, I can't fault his end of the bargain in the work that he did.
Would you say overall his NXT run was a benefit to Saints, or do you think he would have received a similar, if not maybe even better reaction if he came straight from AEW upon signing?
My gut tells me he'd have got a better reaction if he'd gone straight to the main roster, and he could have. I don't think he's benefited much from a year in NXT. There's been no tangible improvements, and I really don't think there were many improvements to be made. The answer really to the question is fairly simple one. I think it would have been better had he been just brought straight into SmackDown or Raw.
I tend to agree. I think there's a certain level of like buzz attached to somebody when they're a free agent, or at least just coming over from the other roster. I suppose maybe one of the excuses is that maybe they're focused on something else and didn't really have the time to make room for Ricky Saints, or they didn't feel like he was a big enough start to make room for. But yeah, it maybe again further suggests that like it wasn't necessarily. I don't know if it was necessarily a productive NXT run. You could say it's one that I don't know, like gave him some accolades to attach to, like being NXT champion. I think that means something. But it didn't necessarily make him a hotter act, upon debut. But of course that can all change, in the weeks ahead.
Agreed. So, I think the only other thing I would add to that way is because he was already a known quantity. I think people like Obafemi, Lash Legend, they can benefit from it because they're coming through the system. They're not coming from somewhere else where they're already a known quantity. And I feel like that can be a difference with Saints and with some others who we've seen go to NXT. Sometimes it feels almost needlessly.
So up next, we get our match between Cody Rhodes and Ricky Saints. So this is, of course, would you believe, the first match that these two have had since that AEW debut for Ricky Saints, Ricky Starks, back in June of 2020. These two did not wrestle each other in a singles capacity all throughout their AEW run. So Saints gains control through the commercial. He punches Cody, landing in the injured eye of Rhodes. Rhodes comes back, delivers his power slam, disaster kick, Cody cutter combo. Saints stops a power slam and hits him with this sort of inverted version of a Sister Abigail. They trade quick near falls. Saints goes for the Rochambeau. Cody counters with the Crossroads that Saints takes with a very nasty, almost like headstand, giving Cody the victory. So unlike maybe prior week's matches involving an NXT debut and a champion, this did not end in a non-finish. They gave the finish here to, the champion. Successfully defending. What do you think about the match itself and also the decision here at the end?
Well, the match itself very competently wrestled between the two of them. I thought that was great. That landing, that Crossroads landing, did look gnarly, and because of what happens next, we didn't get a chance to, because that's the sort of thing they replay at least once. But they were straight into an angle right after this, which we'll get to. But I thought the match was very good. I did feel like the crowd. They came to life a couple of times for Cody's rallies, to chant his name, but they didn't seem very alive for this. I think that affected it as a TV product. You want big reactions to some of the moves, and we weren't really getting that from the crowd. Yeah,
I wouldn't disagree with that assessment of the match itself. I thought it was a well-wrestled match. These two, I think showed very strong chemistry. Like, they probably wanted this match together for a very long time. But I think, again, it maybe goes more to show Saints' status coming into WWE, not necessarily as much of a hyped figure that maybe warrants like a louder reaction for a match against a champion. This didn't, even though it might have been a dream match for these two, didn't feel like a dream match of any real sort, But still, I felt like it was a good way to debut Saints. Would I have had him lose upon entry? It's certainly debatable, but I at least felt like he looked competitive against Rhodes. And that to me is at least like a good baseline, to tell your audience this is a guy who's at least good enough and certainly confident enough, to step up to the champion. I certainly preferred this finish over another DQ, which I think they would have received a lot of criticism for.
I agree. I might have given him a little bit more in the match. Because in the end, you could argue that he came out in the beginning of the show. If you weren't that familiar with this guy, he's extremely arrogant, and then he gets put in his place in the end, So, and then of course, like as we're about to get to, he's forgotten about it almost immediately anyway. True. I think I might have made the match a little more competitive, but I agree with you about the non-finish issue.
You think he stays as a heel?
I do. For the moment. I think they'll let that run its course. If it's not working, they'll readjust, and they should probably.
So right afterwards, in comes Gunther. So Gunther grabs the WWE title. He holds it up after choking Cody out. We obviously have our next match. Now, with Backlash a week away, I mean, they could, cram this onto that show. But also just as likely is that this match could take place at Clash in Italy, which takes place at the end of May.
The other takeaway was, of course, that unfortunately for Ricky Saints, he was left completely forgotten about.
Saints, I mean, he's not going to be challenging for the world championship, right? So I feel like their idea with him is that we just want to establish him. We want people to know who he is, and I feel like they managed that by pairing him with Cody Rhodes right off the bat in the opening segment here, and also in like a match with like substantial time. And then you'll probably continue to see him in the mid card. Like his status will be more determined by the next few weeks booking, how much airtime and how much mic time he gets, which is his real path to getting over.
If the Post Wrestling Cafe were to undergo a drug test in the month of May, we would be testing positive because we are overloaded with content. We are going to be reviewing Hulk Hogan, Real American, all 4 episodes this month. Plus, we will go inside the Manosphere with a review of the latest Louis Theroux documentary. We will also have coverage of the Ronda Rousey-Gina Carano fight, also taking place on Netflix. Rewind Away tackles WCW Super Brawl 2, and we cover NXT TakeOver Brooklyn from 2015. All that, plus all of the XL editions on a weekly basis, Collision Course, Daredevil Born Again, and so much more. It can all be yours at postwrestlingcafe.com. $8 gets you in the door.